Hi, yeah, my name is Charlie. I'm a lawyer. I studied law, never necessarily thought I'd be a lawyer. I was always interested in how societies and institutions are structured, also comparatively, having lived a lot in the EU, US, in China, and the Middle East. And so that's what fascinated me and what brought me to study law. Then, about a decade ago, I joined, well, about 8 years ago, I joined a big international US-based law firm called Clara. And at that time, green policy was kind of, climate policy was really beginning to be rolled out. And there were plenty of new regulations on climate for companies, and they needed somebody to know about this. And so I started setting up a new practice that I led over 6 years and really specialized in corporate climate litigation and regulation across the world, first in Europe, then over here, which was fascinating. And as a corporate climate lawyer, I'd say that I had a bit of a front row seat to what I've come to call the great climate paradox over times, where we have unprecedented financial resources, technological innovation, even broad popular consensus, right? The UNDP surveyed global populations and found out that over 80% of people across the globe, in theory, want stronger climate action. And despite all of this, we're failing Paris Agreement targets really badly, right? News of this weekend is that we already are at 1.5 degrees global warming, above 1990s levels. So, COP started yesterday with these news. October was plus 1.6, and we're headed for, almost 4 degrees by end of the century, which is faster global warming than we ever thought. And so that front row seat is why I decided to kind of take a step and put also my mind and what I knew to trying to come up with better ideas. Look at our narratives of climate action in policy and in politics. They kind of, it's either sacrifice or silver bullets. We're completely caught between, this apocalyptic vision full of rational, scary arguments, climate data, technocratic solutions, things we gotta do, which just alienate people and politically backfire a lot. And then techno-optimism of the sort, nothing can be measured, there's no problem that technology can't fix. And of course, there's many, and some even come out worse, from social to ecological. And this creates false comfort and political backlash ultimately as well. And so we're really caught in that binary alternative. And in all of this, I think the climate crisis is also a crisis of the imagination. And that our failure to articulate other, better, positive visions that are compelling kind of very much leaves the field open for reactionary narratives that just frame all change as a loss. And so that's where my big bet comes in. And I call it a big bet also because I see a lot of resources being put in climate action, thankfully. So things, private and philanthropic capital, discussions and focus like from Climate Week to COP. But we're really not paying enough attention to the softer ideas like ideological side of climate action. And so my bet is to try to pull together the strings of a trusted space where people that don't usually come together to think about these things, so business leaders of the world that I come from, and public institutions, regulators, and more heterodox thinkers, creative minds, people of the arts can come together to speculate on the ideas and the narratives that our institutions lack. So the market tools, the non-market tools, like our visions of the future and our political messaging and so on. Perhaps even a little bit outside of our current policy and cultural tenets, I think. We've criticized the excesses of capitalism and markets for decades, but we don't really have an alternative common sense, at least not a compelling one, that resonates beyond academic circles. And this was very apparent in elections. So our failure to articulate other visions, better visions of the sort, really leaves the field open for reactionary narratives that frame really any change as loss, and those narratives are winning big time. So that's as far I think as the big bet is concerned. So not just improving existing climate dialogue, but really trying to reimagine how a society can build transformative change that can hold consensus. Also, I identify myself with your principle of working with broad alliances. Right? Ultimately, I think that climate action is suffering of two crises. One is a crisis of the imagination, and another is a crisis of democracy. Right, crisis of imagination, solving a crisis of imagination requires really bringing together diverse stakeholders, from people with, power of agency, business leaders, regulators, to people with, bigger superpower of ideas. So, philosophers, sociologists, economists, but also just artists, people that know how to weave narratives, how to test them, how to animate them, and so on. And a crisis of democracy means bringing together all of those very smart people and all of their arts, and also kind of all of us, and try to find new means of very genuine public participation. So do this as part of a bigger conversation. In more practical terms than I've said until now, my project Clima will gather starting next year, all of these bunch of brilliant different people in a very small group to work together very intensely for a couple of days, and then combine this with democratic dialogue and cultural work, and so kind of explode their conversation in a bigger festival of ideas. After these elections, I've come out, which of course have made a lot of us pause and think. I've come out quite reinforced in my conviction that we are at a very magical moment, where if we want, we can get a lot done, because there's a lot of conscience that our change frameworks are failing us, and there's unprecedented, in a way, I think, openness to new thinking, even within traditional institutions of policy and finance. It just means that we're really lacking a lot of the frameworks and ideas that we need to make change compelling to people and also coherent, because in climate policy I've seen a lot of change that isn't really change, and labels like ESG that are, make up to practices we already had, and things that don't help at all. And I think it's a very good time to kind of prune those and think harder about what good solutions need to be amplified, what narratives have served their purpose and need to be replaced, and all of that. So I think it's good times. The years ahead will be interesting. Many. I have wonderful friends and family. My sister, who will become a mother next month. And I don't know if there's any bigger bet one can make on their life and on this world and its better future. And of course, not just that. I think my sister is she's a very discreet, very big bettor in her life generally, and so perhaps unsurprisingly, she's been the one who is so far most betted on me and this and many other things. So yeah, having people that are strong and very close is one of the biggest lucks of my life.